Hi. There's something that I need to talk to you about. And it might make you uncomfortable, but I think in the long run, because we talk about it, it's going to benefit both of us. And that is boundaries. Welcome to the MentellHealth Podcast. I'm Tim, and I invite you on my journey to talk about men's mental health. Before we begin, as always, a brief disclaimer. I am in no shape or form a mental health professional. I'm a man who's struggled with his own mental health and wants to share his experience and the experience of others. So, as my, again, incredibly well acted out intro may have told you, is that today I would like to talk about boundaries, what they are, why you need them, and how you set them, and why men struggle to, keep them. Boundaries is something that we all know that exist, and we all kind of know the principle of, but most of us are more familiar with them actively in physical sense. So I'm in a room, and this room has boundaries that are walls. So I can't move anywhere further out of this room than past the walls. Those are very visible physical borders. There are also visible but not physical borders in such, for example, when it comes to countries. If you want to travel from one country to the next, you are stepping over a border. The border is real and physical, as are all borders. They are real, but not all of them are physical. So yes, you can physically stop you from walking through them, but physical in the sense of we can maybe see a border patrol sign or a fence, for example, in some areas, or even the big wall of China. That is a physical border that stops people from walking from one country to the next. I think that was mostly used to keep people from Mongolia out that try to get into China. Anyways, all of these boundaries serve a purpose. In here, they serve the purpose of keeping me warm in the winter, keeping me, not very cool in the summer, but that's not so much the world's problem or fault as it is the fault of how hot it's become in this country because of fossil fuels burning. And anyways, I'm drifting off. Or to shelter me, to also keep my stuff safe from other people that maybe want it. It also shields my filthy naked body when I walk around here so that other people can't see it. But it also makes me feel comfortable because it's my home. And I know that in these walls, within these boundaries, I can do whatever I want. And I can do things in a way that pleases me, that makes me happy, that makes me feel good. And in the same sense, we can use boundaries that we set with other people in a way that makes us feel comfortable, that makes us feel safe, and that makes us feel happy. And in a bit, I'm also going to talk about how setting boundaries is important and respecting other people's boundaries is important, but boundaries don't excuse shitty behavior. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first of all, now we know what physical boundaries are, and we know that they're important also for us and our well-being to set with other people. But why? And what do they do? Because quite a few people, and I'm one of them, I always think that people will like me the best if I make everything as easy for them as possible. When they want to do something, I'll go along with it. If they don't want to do something, then I'll go along with it. If they tell me something about myself that I may or may not want to hear, go ahead, tell me. If they want to hear something positive about them, I'll tell them. If they don't want to hear something negative about them, I won't tell them. And that is something that is called a people pleaser. And there's quite a few people pleasers out there. Statistically speaking, most people pleasers are actually women, because we've created a society in which the power structure is in a way that the men dominate and can become violent towards women, who then have been told to just do what they're told so that they don't get hurt or, mistreated in any way. But as I am maybe a small example, there's also some men out there who are people pleasers. But even if you're not a people pleaser, and if you set your own boundaries, it's not so much only about setting your own boundaries, it's also about accepting other people's boundaries. That is important and essential. Because when living in a society, it is quite important that we, get along together. That's why we set rules that, belong to our society and how we can act with each other before there's punishment. For example, you can't just steal things from other people. You can't just hit other people. You can't just exploit other people. Unless you're rich, then you can do that. And these rules are set in our society to live with each other. But that's the grand scheme of things. In the smaller scheme of things, I need to be able to live together with you in a daily or in a regular or in a one-time interaction. And also with my partner, with my friends, whoever, with my parents, with potential children, on a small microscopic in compared to how big the world is, but in a very macroscopic and how you experience your life scale, we need to be able to set boundaries with each other so that we can live happily, safely, and comfortably together. Let's, for example, this is an example of my personal experience. I am not good with public displays of affection. I don't really like it. I think it's something that, I feel more comfortable showing my physical affection in the comfort of my own home or in privacy, where it's just between my partner and me to share those moments with. But, other people have different feelings about PDA. My feeling about PDA is not the ultimate standard of how it should be. My idea of what is good and to do in public and what is not good in public is not the rule for everyone. Even though, of course, I think that should be the case, but it's not true. Just because I want something to be true doesn't mean it is true. And with partners in the past, when they wanted to show public affection towards me, I let it happen. And I felt uncomfortable. I felt very uncomfortable because I didn't like it. But I never said that I didn't like it. I let it happen until at some point I may have just pushed them away and be like, no, don't, stop this. Or told them, can you please stop? This is weird. Or you are weird, stop it, I don't like this. Or you shouldn't do this. This is not right. This is not in a good way, how you should be affectionate towards someone else. You should do it at home. It's disgusting. It's weird. All very negative words, all very much focused on that other person and how they are doing something wrong. And without ever telling them why. Just making them feel responsible for creating a situation that has made me uncomfortable. And yes, the situation arose because that person showed public display of affection towards me, which made me uncomfortable. But that still isn't their fault, just because that's the way it causal happened. Because one link in the causal chain that's missing is me telling that person that I do not feel comfortable showing public displays of affection. So how was that person to know? And I may have said, I don't feel like this right now. Okay, that's a good boundary, but that means in that moment. So at other times, I may feel good. How is that person to know when it's right and when it's wrong to show public displays of affection? Or I may have said, I don't like kissing in public. Okay, that's a good boundary. But then the person keeps hugging me, holding my hand, rubbing my back, wanting me to rub their back. All of which may make me feel uncomfortable. And in my mind, I said, I don't like kissing in public, which implies everything. But how is that person supposed to know? Because that's not what I said. I said, I don't like kissing in public, or I didn't feel like it at that moment. So even though in my mind, of course, I said this is making me feel uncomfortable in certain times or with certain aspects of public displays of affection, I never said I don't feel comfortable showing public affection. So could we talk about how we can go over this? Because I don't feel comfortable. And that is a lesson I learn very often, because as much as I wish, I'm not perfect. And it's always way easier when talking in this microphone or talking towards the camera, when there's nobody around and I'm not in a stressful situation, to be like, yeah, that's how you do it. It's so easy. Just set your boundary. Do I statements. That's how it works. And I get into that more in a minute. But in the moment, of course, I don't. And I need to learn it again and again that, if I don't set a boundary, the other person can't respect my boundary. And if I then get mad, the person that I should get mad at is me, because I didn't set the boundary. What are healthy boundaries? Well, one way to achieve or to get to setting a healthy boundary is what social psychology researcher Brené, I think that's how you pronounce her name, if not, I'm so sorry, Brené Brown has said is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Now, what do they mean when they say that? Well, exactly what I just tried to outline with that elaborate and confusing example I said. The more specific and precise you can be in setting your boundary, the better. Because the more specific and precise you are, the more the other person knows how they can and should behave around you, and what is something they can and what is something they can't do. Another aspect of how to set a healthy boundary is to talk about your limits. Talk about what you don't like, what you can't do, where you feel uncomfortable, and not how they make you feel uncomfortable, how it's their fault that is happening, how a situation arose because of someone else and now you feel unhappy about it. And again, I need to learn this. It takes time. It's not easy because it's not something that, a lot of us have grown up with naturally doing. And we didn't grow up learning to set up boundaries that way. Not everyone. Some people are great at setting boundaries and other people aren't. And that's not, well, you didn't learn it as a kid, so now you can't do it. No. We learn until we stop. That's not something that, in us makes us stop learning because we're not capable of it, but we can learn until we don't want to learn anymore, or, until we die. But I didn't want to really say that because, as you know, I don't really like the topic of dying. So I statements help setting boundaries in a way that makes the other person realize this is something that has something to do with you and how you feel and how they can be to help you with your feelings. Because believe it or not, people don't necessarily want to cross your boundaries if you set them in a healthy way. And of course, there's people who don't experience on a day-to-day basis. For example, people in the trans or LGBTQ community who are blatantly dismissed and their boundaries are not being respected on the internet and in real life. And yes, so I, as this cis white man, I'm not trying to tell you that people want to respect your boundaries if you experience that that's not happening. I'm just talking out of the articles I've read and now people that I've spoken to, that, the friends in your life, the family that you have, and the romantic partners, if they are, healthy and self-reflected, then they want to respect your boundaries, because boundaries help us to live together in a good and comfortable way. And people that want to make you feel happy and make you feel safe with them, they want to respect your boundaries. So if you give them the opportunity to respect them by communicating them clearly and telling them, for example, something that happens with me, I get overwhelmed when there's too much talking around me, or when there's too much different noises around me, and instead of saying, oh, you're too loud, can you please be quiet, I can say, and I'm working really hard to say it every single time, but obviously when we're overwhelmed, it's more difficult. So we need to be kind to ourselves, but also then apologize and explain that that's happened to the other person. Anyways, long story short, instead of saying you're too loud or you're talking too much, saying I'm feeling overwhelmed. This is too much for me, not you are too much. This is just right now, my energy level is gone. I, for me, need to spend some time quietly with myself. And then we can do that later. And then the person can be like, yes, of course, I understand. See you later. Instead of feeling shit about themselves because they've done something that they didn't know was a problem in the first place, they can now be like, oh yeah, of course, I understand. That happens to me, totally with you. You do your thing and I'll do my thing, and we talk about it again later. Or when we are invited to go out with people, and I, like I said, get overwhelmed, and sometimes my social battery empties very quickly. Instead of saying, I don't want to hang out with you anymore, or just being, angry, getting angrier and angrier because the energy is being drained, because I'm just not able to spend more time with them, and then making them feel uncomfortable because I don't like them. That's what it then feels like to them, saying, I'm sorry, I can only hang out for an hour. You don't even have to explain it. But at least you shouldn't have to. Of course, people aren't used to it, but the more we get used to it, the better. If someone says, I can only hang out for an hour, then that should be fine. And it can be stuff like that with me where I get overwhelmed, or if someone, if you work together with other people and someone takes your pen or takes your stuff because they grew up in a household where everybody took everything, and you grew up in a household where you need to be protective about things, then in order for that to be healthily communicated, you can say, I don't feel comfortable with people taking my things because it's just, doesn't make me feel good. Or I would appreciate if you could please ask me because I feel like I need to know where my things is at any time to feel safe, or to be able to work properly, or to concentrate, focus. Any of these things is another healthy boundary, but it can also be about something that you don't feel comfortable other people doing. It can be about someone. I've had that conversation recently, as maybe the people that watch this on video see, but I've got a nose piercing very recently. And when I came to work the first time, when someone noticed it, they said, I hope other people don't make comments. Yeah, I hope so too, but why are you saying it? Are you saying it because in the past, and this is true, you have made comments? Or are you saying it because other people have made comments towards you, which also sucks? And that's actually what we're in the conversation about, because that person felt like people have made comments about her physical appearance too much, which then started a conversation where I reiterated, because I said that before, how I don't appreciate people talking about me. And that is how that then can be resolved, by saying, I don't appreciate those comments. It's not necessarily saying what you're saying is wrong, even though maybe it is. But when we attack people, it usually starts with a confrontation, or starts a confrontation. But when you talk about, I don't feel comfortable with this, then you set a boundary that they can respect by not talking about it. And if more people set that boundary, then maybe they'll realize, this may just be a general shitty thing to say. Boundaries can also help in conflict resolution. For example, when there is an argument and some person is adamant that that view that they have is the only correct one, but they're saying it in a way of, you are wrong, which obviously then makes me feel, well, no, you're wrong, because I know I'm right. And just by telling each other how we are both wrong in you statements, they'll probably not go anywhere. I understand you have a different opinion on me, and I respect your opinion, but please don't try to force your opinion on me. Because they're both opinions. Opinions aren't facts. Because you feel that milk goes first into the bowl with cereal doesn't mean you're correct, because I very much feel differently and feel that the cereal goes in before the milk is added to it, because in my opinion, that's the only way it makes sense to me. Whereas in the past, I may have said, are you an idiot? If you put the milk in first, then how do you know you have enough milk? What if the cereal just shoots out and then you need to pour in milk afterwards anyways? But, by putting the cereal in first and then adding the milk, you know exactly how much milk ratio you have, cereal to milk ratio you need. I don't say that anymore, or at least I try to. Which isn't to say, because, and this maybe is just a me thing, maybe it's a thing that I've experienced more amongst other men, or it's a general thing. I don't know. This is a binary thing, or just this one group of people does it, but it's just my observation. Feel free to message me if you've observed it differently, but I enjoy arguing with people. I really do. It's great. I love it. I love telling someone that they're wrong, but that should be in a situation where the other person knows that it's not serious, or that I'm not attacking them personally, or that I know they are emotionally secure enough and they know that this is something that we are arguing on an intellectual level and not a personal or emotional level, that's happening. So these things need to be ensured before I can argue in a way where I say, you fucking idiot, why the fuck do you say that? Are you completely out of your mind? And then the person can tell me, what are you talking to me like that, you fucking dumb nut? You're an idiot. And then we can do that. But that's not how I can speak to everyone, and that's not how you can speak to everyone, and that's not how generally we should speak to people, unless those first parameters are met. Which is why we have setting healthy boundaries. And those healthy boundaries can be set with your partners, those healthy boundaries can be set with your co-workers, with your employers, with your employees, if you are a manager, with your parents, with your kids, with your friends, strangers, anyone. And they can be respected by all of these people. And it doesn't have to be a power dynamic, especially when it comes to work, partnerships, or children and parents. Both can set boundaries that can be respected by the other person. Of course, in some instances, there is this, someone needs to take responsibility or needs to make sure that the other person is safe or healthy in a certain way, but that can all work within the framework of healthy boundaries. I can say, I respect that you have this boundary, but in the situation we're in right now, is there a compromise we can find that we can respect that boundary but still accomplish this thing that we need to do? And then the person feels heard and knows that I'm not disrespecting their boundary because I just feel like doing that, but because the situation that we're in demands a conversation of how much can we appreciate or respect that boundary and still get these things done that we need to get done. And this leads me to what I've allured to, what I hinted at earlier, that not every healthy boundary, or I should say, not every boundary you draw is necessarily a healthy one, and is necessarily something that you should just take as a universal. And what do I mean by that? Well, as I've said before, a boundary is an I statement that tells other people the parameters and the framework of how you feel safe, cared for, and happy in the interaction with these people. And they're good. They're your boundaries and they're healthy. But that doesn't mean that those people need to hang out with you if they can't respect their boundary. And if someone can't respect their boundary, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. They just accept that boundary of yours and then decide for them. That's not something that I can do and live with, so I'm sorry, this is not going to work. Or we need to find a compromise, but I can't do that. In a relationship, a romantic relationship, where one person feels, I don't want to go on holiday with your parents because I don't feel I can have a comfortable and relaxing time when they are around. And if the other person says, well, I don't feel like I can go on holiday without my parents because they've raised me and I'm now in a place where I can afford a nice holiday with them for all of us, then the conversation leads to, well, how can we make a compromise? And it can also be, well, then maybe we can't go on holiday together because you're respecting each other's boundary. And then that's okay. If you are okay with that happening, or you find a compromise where you take separate holidays and then one together, or any other form, but it's all about respecting the boundary, because a healthy boundary always has to do with you and not with impacting other people and how they live their life. It is not a healthy boundary to say, I don't feel comfortable with you wearing a outfit in whatever that looks. I mean, you can say, I don't feel comfortable, but that doesn't mean the other person has to respect it, because it's their body and they can do with their body what they want. And another important thing when it comes to boundaries is to be able to say no and to accept a no. Because just because someone asks you to do something doesn't mean you have to do that. And just because a person refuses to do something, and in refuse I just mean simply say no, it doesn't mean that they, are vicious, mean, don't like you, or, whatever. They have their values, they have their energy levels, and they have their capacity of doing things. And if the thing you ask of them, goes against any of those and they say no, then that's okay. So is it if you say no. If someone asks me to help them with a very physical project after work and I've had a long day and I say no, because I've decided that I don't have the energy level to do that, then I'm not a bad friend. I've just, done my best and said, no, I can't, I'm sorry. I don't even have to say sorry. I just say no, I'm saying sorry because, I want to be nice. And if someone asks you on a date and you say no, then that's okay. And if you ask someone on a date and they say no, then that's also okay. And they're not mean or mean-spirited or whatever else some people will talk on the internet about that, if someone refuses to go on a date with you because that's all horse shit. And if someone, goes on a date with you and then says no afterwards to seeing you again or whatever, then that's also okay, because the date is there to get to know you and to find out whether or not you fit together. Same goes for you. If you as a man don't want to date someone again, then say no. Or if you don't want to help someone, say no. If you don't want to do the extra work, that's okay, say no. That's a boundary. It's a healthy boundary to set. As long as, you stay within your values, your energy levels, and you're not mean. If someone, dies of a heart attack right now and you refuse to help them because you are, preoccupied with your latest Instagram post, then maybe that's not a good boundary to set. But that's also a very mean example. Boundaries is a very important topic, and it's very important that we set healthy boundaries that have to do with us and our limits and our values and our capacities. And not with other people. Just because you think something is not good because that's against your value doesn't mean that that's something other people have to adhere to. Because you find it difficult to imagine that anyone could not be happy having a penis when they're born with it doesn't mean that that's true for them. That is your value that you can have, but that doesn't mean you can impose that view on other people other than yourself. You can say, I don't feel comfortable with that. Good for you. Then you don't have to hang out with them. Nobody forces you to. And if they feel comfortable being themselves, then that's good. So those are my 2 cents. This is it. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about boundaries. I hope you found it helpful. Feel free to message me if you did. Feel free to message me if you didn't. I always love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear your stories on this show, and anonymously or with you talking to me. You can message me on Instagram, MentellHealth _podcast. You can find me on the internet, men-tell-health.com. You can email me at tim@men-tell-health.com. You can post on YouTube, message me, or leave a comment. If you found this helpful, please give it a review on any of the podcasting apps. Give it a rating on YouTube. Follow them. Share it with your friends and family. And check out the other episodes. There's plenty now. So yeah, as always, thank you for listening and watching. Remember, I hear and I see you. And I hope you hear and or see me again next week. Goodbye.